Thanks for tuning into the 6Three podcast. I'm your host, Joel, with my co-host, Ben. This is our first show, and you're doing this where we are in person together. Ben lives in Kalamazoo, and I'm in Grand Rapids, so it's a pretty distant commute just to do an hour and a half show.
Yep.
So week one just kicked off last week, and I wanted to get your thoughts on what teams and players stood out.
Yeah. Teams, I'll start there. I know we're not really our expectations probably didn't change a whole lot for them, but the Eagles, just because of how dominant they were, 32-6 against the Falcons. That's pretty. I was actually a little bit higher on the Falcons than I was the Eagles, so it surprised me a little bit. The Falcons could not block anybody that game.
Matt Ryan
was struggling. Another one, the Bengals beating the Vikings. That was an impressive win. In overtime. The Cardinals certainly are a big standout, smoking the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go one more. It's pretty much, I'm just going to say the Saints just because of how dominant it was. I'm pretty sure I picked them to win the game, but I thought it was going to be close. So I'm definitely going to go with the Saints there. That was just they destroyed them. So.
Yeah, and some players that I thought really jumped out because of the teams you mentioned. Kyler Murray, right off the bat, looked really good. Jameis Winston didn't have all the yards, but he had 5 touchdowns, was clean, no picks, which is something that we know Jameis has had issues with in the past. Jalen Hurts also had a very good week one, great 2021 debut. Derek Carr battling on the Monday night game. That was a very good game. The primetime game so far, including last night's Thursday night game, have all been very good. And then Tyrod Taylor jumping in and taking over Deshaun Watson's spot. Yeah. And I don't think Watson's ever getting that spot back. I mean, someone might trade for him later in the year, but Tyrod Taylor looks like he's going to run this Texans ship. And they got a nice dub in the first week. Running backs, the tandem of Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. Got a lot of targets, and I think we might see a lot of that dink and dunk offense from the Lions. We'll talk about them a little bit more. Elijah Mitchell was a 6th-round draft pick out of Louisiana, and with Trey Sermon being a healthy scratch, that was kind of a surprise. Tyson Williams, now everybody knew he was going to get the carries with all the injuries that have plagued the Ravens so far.
He's still really good.
But he was effective in the carries that he did get. Mark Ingram was good. Melvin Gordon was good. Wide receivers, Amari Cooper, which may not necessarily be a surprise. He is an upper echelon receiver, but he still has, I guess, a monkey on his back where he wants to prove he's one of the best.
I would throw Dak into that conversation if we're going to talk about the Cowboys at all, too, just because, I expected him to be good. He was very good last year, but you never knew what coming off the injury. You never knew what he was going to do. He was toe-to-toe with Brady pretty much the whole game. Until the end.
He looked good. I think a lot of people consider him to be a top 10 to 12 quarterback for sure.
400 yards, 42 completions.
Great numbers against the Bucs defense, that's for sure. Deebo Samuel had a great week one, but that was the Lions, so that doesn't really spell long-term success. Sterling Shepard was good for week one and then also yesterday. So Zach Pascal was another one. Van Jefferson looked like Matthew Stafford's favorite target. Antonio Brown was a great choice. And then KJ Osborne looked like it could be moving to number 3 for the Vikings wide receivers. Tight ends, Juwan Johnson for the Saints had a big game. Tyler Higbee. Now, Stafford likes to throw his tight ends, so we expect Higbee to have more success than usual.
For sure.
And then Farrell Brown. I had my bad surprises, Aaron Rodgers, Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert, Matt Ryan, Andy Dalton. Now, Andy Dalton was efficient, but the Bears offense couldn't get anything long-term.
I'm going to add Zeke to that list as well. He was terrible. Now I know the Bucs defensive line is good. So the jury is still out on that one. We'll see if
I had Zeke on mine.
But he had a rough game. He was good in pass protection. He did what he needed to do. It was pretty clear right away that they weren't going to give up any rushing yards. So
Tony Pollard working his carries up though with Zeke strong, because Pollard still was hopping 4.5 carries. Derrick Henry could not get anything going. Antonio Gibson was rough. James Robinson, especially with Travis Etienne going out, people thought, okay, well, it's going to be just like last year. The undrafted rookie last year had a great 1,000-plus yard season, and he did not get more than 39 yards in week one. And then Najee Harris. A lot of people expect him to be a rookie year candidate. So wide receivers, Allen Robinson, Henry Ruggs, Julio Jones, Mike Evans, Cortland Sutton, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore, and Brandon Ayuk.
All of them all of them struggle. I don't know. Like the Mike Evans one's an interesting game. It's frustrating because he's on my fantasy team for a lot of my teams, but I think that team's gonna be weird this year because they're just gonna change.
Someone else is going to get the big
the main
game.
target every week. I mean, Gronk had a massive game. When you talk about Gronk, he had a huge game. But that might not always stick. They've got a couple tight ends. I think Mike Evans still going to be a big part of the passing game still. But I mean, if Antonio Brown is anywhere near what he was when he was considered elite, I mean, that changes. I mean, that offense is already explosive and crazy. That changes everything because then you got a legitimately elite go-to receiver at that point too.
Yeah,
maybe two of them
You're
really.
that's not really good fantasy. You're going to start between Godwin and Evans.
Exactly.
Sure.
Exactly.
The tight ends that struggled, I would say Zach Ertz, Mark Andrews, Eric Ebron, and Robert Tonyan. Those are guys that are probably considered top 12 tight ends in the league, and they did not get anything done. Injuries also are taking a toll, and I think injuries are kind of at an unprecedented rate right now.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think some of it has to do with it. You could have to do with some of the changes in the offseason.
The three preseason games, and some starters are not even touching the preseason.
They're just being really careful with starters. They talked about it in that Monday or that Thursday night game, the 9th, where guys were just getting cramping like crazy even too. And it's like these guys can't even make it through a full 70 play game. And it was hot, and I get it. That it is what it is, especially in Florida. But they're just struggling to even get through that. Their conditioning's not even there. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think there's been some significant injuries too. Obviously, before the season, we had all the Ravens injuries just right before the season, which certainly hurt them. And then obviously the Lions lose Akuda now, that's such a weird injury too. I mean, I don't know if you chalk that up to anything.
I have that listed as a long-term injury. I mean, I put a couple long-term injuries. Mekhi Becton, Blake Cashman for the Jets kind of jump out. LaMarcus Joyner was a key defensive back for them too. Gerald McCoy went down on Monday night for the Raiders. Ronald Darby out for the Broncos, which means we get to see Patrick Surtain Jr. Take over. Ryan Fitzpatrick with a hip injury. Jerry Jeudy's out 5 to 6 weeks. Raheem Mostert was initially out 6 to 8 months. Now they're saying the season. Jason Barrett also for the 49ers. So the 49ers dealing with injury problems like they dealt with so poorly last year. Michael Gallup out for a while with the Cowboys, along with DeMarcus Lawrence now going out.
Taylor Decker. Talk about Taylor Decker too. I mean, that happened before the game, but that one hurts the Lions. Obviously, we'll get to them, and maybe it doesn't hurt them as much as we maybe thought.
Yeah, Baltimore. I mean, even Marcus Peters, they lost. The Ravens' offensive injuries are getting so much recognition, but Marcus Peters is a big defensive back loss. Yeah, Gus Edwards, Sean Murphy Bunting, Curtis Samuel, Traquan Smith, Will Lutz, who's considered a top 3 kicker pretty much unanimously, and then Lyle Collins suspended for 5 games. So I think there's already some concerns with injuries, and who knows how to pile up. So if I have to give fantasy advice, I would say if you do waiver point systems, I would try to save them up and not just jump on the first guy because there will be injuries that will inevitably happen.